Hi, this is Wendy. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, I certainly hope that you will enjoy what you see. And if you find that these videos are helpful for your crochet journey, then please consider liking and subscribing and even becoming a member to get free patterns. Today I have the cutest project for you. This little car buddy was designed for my grandchild as a way for him to keep his books and his toys and maybe snacks in the car for long journeys to Grandma's house. It's done with fairly simple stitches and a 4mm hook, which is a bit small for the worsted weight yarn that I used for this project, but it does make a fabric that's fairly dense and stiff, which is great for what we're trying to do here. And in fact, it's really great for the yarn that you've had hanging around in your stash because you find it doesn't work up very soft. Maybe it's a little too stiff and plasticky. That's perfect for this project. The color doesn't so much matter, but you'll want some contrast between the features of the car buddy and the base yarn. So let's get started. I'm going to assume that you can do some basic crochet stitches for this and focus mostly on the details and the assembly. If you need some help with practicing your chain and single crochet for the beginning panel, then just go back to my beginner video and it will help you out with that. So what we're going to do is start with a chain of 51 stitches. So that's what I did here, 51 chains. Then single crochet in the second chain from the hook and across, chain one at the end, and work your way back. And just keep going with single crochet rows until you've made a square. Now my piece here is just under 14 inches wide, about 14 inches wide. And then I continued until I had 14 inches in the other direction. It doesn't so much matter exactly how big it is. There's a little, flexibility in that, but it should be square. Another way to check that out is to fold it corner to corner. And if your other corners also line up, then you have a square, okay? If it'll fold in half on the diagonal like that. Okay, so once you have your square, and you can see this one's fairly stiff because I used a fairly small hook. The next step is to form the shape of the envelope for the face. And what you will do for that is simply fold all the corners in until you make an envelope shape. Like that. See how that's an envelope shape? Fold the last corner in just to make sure that everything lines up properly. You might have to shift things around a bit to find your center point. Okay. Then I'm going to stitch down these two seams to hold the bottom of the envelope together. So just take your yarn needle and your thread. I'm going to start by putting these two corners together and drawing up the third corner like so that everything meets nicely in the middle. And then I'm going to stitch down these two seams here, just with a mattress stitch or a whip stitch going around and around to hold those two together. And once I have these two seams finished, I'll come back and show you the next step. All right, so after I've made sure that my seams are nice and secure, so little hands jamming a book in there won't pull my ends loose or anything, you can see that it gets this envelope shape, and actually almost looks kind of like a purse. And you could definitely make a purse using the same strategy. But what I'm going to do is take this top part and fold it to the back and stitch it down because I'd like that held back out of the way. So I'll just put a couple of stitches in here to tack it down and out of the way. Okay, so flipping it back over to the front, we're going to work a face on top of the front part of the pocket here. I'm going to start with the eyes. I bought some plastic safety eyes to put in the middle here, but if you don't have those, you could just use some black yarn and stitch them on, but they give it some personality. So this is going to have an eyebrow on it like this, and I'll show you how to make these two parts. If you wanted to, you could just put the safety eyes right on here, and that might look better if you wanted to make it look like a cat, for example, but I wanted mine to look more like a hound dog, so that's what I came up with. To make an eye like this, you will need some dark colored yarn. I have a dark brown here. Chain 4. In the first chain, work 12 double crochets. If you need to practice your double crochets, go back and look at my double crochet video for beginners. It will be kind of hard to see here because it's a dark yarn, but if you count the V's behind your hook going all the way around to the beginning, you'll be able to see if you have the right number. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I need 2 more. And then join it up with the top of the first stitch. Okay, a little tip for making your transitions better, and maybe you've seen this before, but take out that last pull through, put your hook through the back of the stitch that you want to join to, grab onto that final loop and pull it through from the front to the back, and that gives a neater join there. The next step is to add this white edging here to make the eye really pop. So I've got some white worsted weight here. And I'm going to join that to the stitch that I just pulled through from the front to the back. Tug on that to hide it in there. And I'm going to do 2 single crochets in the first 4 stitches. So that's 1, first stitch, second stitch, third stitch, and 4th stitch. So there's 8 white single crochets over 4 stitches to make the top part of the eye here. And then around the rest of it, just do a slip stitch. So into the next stitch in the back loop only, pick up a loop and pull it all the way through. In the back loop of the next one, same thing, not pulling these too tight because they need to be able to negotiate the curve. So working just in the back loops, slip stitch all the way around to the beginning where your first white stitch is. Let me see, one more. That one doesn't want to go through. There we go. Okay, and then join into the last stitch. Again, I'm going to drop my loop put my hook in from the back and pull that through from the front to the back. There's the top part of the eye and the space where I'm going to put the safety eye. So I'll just trim that white there, pull it through, and I can use that later to sew it down. Cut the brown as well, work in the threads, maybe hanging on to one of them to sew the eye down onto the front of the caddy like this. Now taking your safety eye, here, they come in two pieces like this. Just take it and poke it through between the double crochets. So we don't want to put it right in the center of the brown part. I actually put it above the center, so in between the two center double crochets at the center of the thicker white part here. So between the second and third pair of single crochets. Push it through from the front to the back. You could, if you like, push it all the way through and put your fastener on the back, but I actually hit it in between by pushing it onto the back like this. So make a second eye like that and you'll be ready to carry on to the eyebrows. Okay, so for the eyelids that get fastened on above the eyes like that to give it a little more expression, it's pretty straightforward. So start with a chain of 8, and then in the second chain from the hook do a single crochet, in the third one do a half double crochet, then 3 double crochets, okay, then another half double, and a single in the last stitch to finish it off. Kind of curls around when you do that. Pull the yarn through and cut. Okay, leave a bit of an end on it, several inches, and you can just use that to sew it right on to the front of the caddy, something like that. All right, next step. Oh, of course you need 2 of these, right? One for each side. The next step is to make the nose and the mouth. Going back to the dark brown yarn, make the nose as follows. Start with a chain of 5, and in the first chain, treble crochet, and we're going to treble crochet 5 times. And of course a treble is 2 wraps, go into the stitch, draw one up, go through 2, another 2, and another 2. So that's 4. One more is 5. Then to go back to this first chain, I'm going to chain 4 and slip stitch back in that first chain. So I end up with kind of a triangle like this for the nose. It's kind of cute. Now to make the mouth, You could do just a chain, but I like something a little bit thicker. So I'm going to do a modified chain that's kind of doubled up. So to do that, go in as if you're going to pick up a stitch for a single crochet. So you have 2, and then pick up a loop and draw through 2. Now put your hook back into that first stitch, the one that's closer to your hook. So the previous one right there. Do you see that? Draw up a loop and go through 2 again. And then the same thing. Go back, put the previous loop on your hook, pick one up, go through 2. So each time you're picking up the one you just did, the most recent one, and going through there. And it just makes a thicker chain. I saw this online somewhere, I can't recall where. Okay, pick up the one, go through both of those, and then just the one that's closer to the hook, pick it up again, go through both, pick up the one closest to the hook, go through both. Oops, I dropped it. Try and keep it as consistent as possible so you don't end up with some stitches that are a lot looser. I hope you can see that even though it's a dark yarn. Kind of have to nudge that stitch back onto the hook, encourage it a bit. Okay, and continue like that for several inches. There's really no way to tell you exactly how long it should be, except that you want it to make a nice little smile when you put it down on the work like that. I think that looks pretty good, right about there. So that is, let's see how long that is. 3 inches long. Okay, so I'm just going to pull a single loop through this time to bind it off. Again, leave a few inches of yarn to sew this down onto the front of the car buddy. Okay, now we need the other side. So going back to the nose here, where this one side of the mouth came out, put your hook back in, get the dark brown yarn again, draw up a loop, chain 1 to fasten it, and then just like before, pick up a stitch like a single crochet, go through 2, and then continue by just picking up the one closer to your hook each time and drawing the yarn through both of them. If you make them too tight, it's hard to pick them up, so be careful about that. There we go. Go through both, and it just makes a thicker chain, almost like a cord, I guess you could call it. It's a bit fiddly, but it's only for 3 inches, so I think it's worth it. All right, just check that they're both about the same length. I don't think I went one too far before binding it off. And there you go. All the little threads have to be worked in, of course. The nice thing about this kind of cord is it's fairly flat. It's not like an I cord. And it will stitch down nicely using thread or yarn to make a nice little smile on my car buddy. Before I go on to the ears, I'm going to sew down the elements that I've already finished. Just because it's fun and because I would like to kind of judge how big and where to put the ears. So, placing them kind of where I want them to go, I'm going to stitch them down, starting with the eyes, making sure that they're kind of centered on opposite sides of this joining point here. Tip them in, or, well, I guess tip them that way a little bit. And I'll take some white and I'll sew around the eyes, and using the brown, I'll sew down the mouth and the nose, and then using the main color, the eyebrows. Okay, so working from behind and anchoring my yarn by pulling it through at least an inch of stitches and then going around again just through the last little bit. That will anchor it so it won't pull right through. And come through to the front. And just going around and around, sew down the eye to the front of the pocket here, making sure that you don't catch the back part of the pocket and accidentally sew it shut. That would be disappointing. And because this is meant for a small child, you of course want to make sure that everything is sewn down really well so they can't accidentally pick any parts off and put them in their mouth. Okay, and when I get all the way around the eye, I'm going to go back to the inside again and bind that thread off, or that yarn off. I tend to use those terms interchangeably sometimes, and I shouldn't. But run it through a number of stitches and back again to anchor it. Cut it close to the work, and there's one eye sewn down. The first one's actually easier because the second one now you want to make sure that it's at a corresponding spot. So you get the idea. I'll come back when I've got all of these sewn down. Okay, in case you're wondering how I stitched down the mouth, I just went right down the face of it like this, right down the center. Tip the needle up and come right back up again like that, just sewing it right through the face. To check that it kind of looks like the other one. I think the eyes are a little farther apart than what I was thinking they would be, but I'm just going to leave it. If it's a little wonky and cross-eyed, it just gives it a little more character. Okay, and again, work that off on the inside. making sure that your threads don't show through the front if it's a darker thread on a lighter background. It's better to see them on the inside. For the eyelids, eyebrows, I don't know what to call them. I think I will put them just kind of touching the top of the safety eye like that and around the outside a little bit. Hound dogs tend to be kind of droopy-eyed, so I think I'll sew them on sort of like that. Okay, so the ears are kind of a long tongue depressor shape, flat on one end and round on the other. And they just get tucked in right at the top of the opening here, right at the top corner, and kind of place them whatever angle you think you like, and then they get sewn on the inside like that. For the ears, start with a chain of 26, and then starting in the second chain from the hook, single crochet all the way along that chain until you get to the last chain, which was the first one you made, of course. Single crochet 3 times in that chain at the end here, and we're going to wrap around the end and work back down the other side of the chain. That's going to make that nice rounded end on the ear. So across from each single crochet that you did on the first side, you put another single crochet on the other side. When you're looking at the chains, it can be a little difficult to figure out where to put your hook, but I just look for the base of the single crochet from the other side, and that's where I put my hook, so that they're opposite each other and I know I have the same number on each side. Okay, back at the top of the ear, chain 1 and turn. Work back down the ear for 24 stitches, and then in the 3 at the end, where you did 3 around the end of the ear in the 1 stitch, you'll put 2 in each of those. Okay, so I'm down to the end where I have 3 in 1 stitch, and I'll do 2 in each of those. That will get me around this end again, and then back up the other side. So again, at the end of that row, chain 1 and turn, and for row 3, do 24 single crochets. Okay, after 24 single crochets, in the next one do 2 single crochets, in the next one 1 single crochet, in the next one 2 single crochets, and then 1 in the next one and 2 in the next one. So 2, 1, 2, 1, and 2. Then the rest of the way up the other side. Row 4 is the last row for the ears. So again, chain 1 and turn, do 24 single crochets, and then to go around the end this time, we'll do 5 groups of 2 with 1 in between. So 2 single crochets, and then 1, and then 2, and then 1, 2, 1, and 2. And I'll put all these numbers on the screen so you can follow along. then single crochet to the end and bind off. If it curls a little bit, don't worry about it. They're ears. It's fine if they curl a little bit. Okay, so stitch the ears on however you think they look best. It's fairly subjective. I just tuck them in underneath the top like that. And then the last piece to make is the strap that goes on the top here with a button, and that hooks around the headrest. And it will work for a front or rear facing car seat, depending on which headrest you hang it from. But first, I think this puppy needs a bit of a tongue here, so I've just got some scrap yarn in a blush color, and I'm going to go round and around and embroider a little tongue sticking out here. Just trying to keep the stitches close enough together that there's no big gaps. Of course, you can always go back and go over it again if you think it needs more. Don't pull them too tight so that it buckles. You can always go back and loosen them up a bit. Of course, this is totally optional. You might think it looks fine without any kind of a tongue sticking out. Maybe one more in the middle there. There we go. I think he's kind of cute. Okay, I made my straps, let me see here. Made them 16 inches long. You may want to adjust that depending on your vehicle and whether you want longer straps. But to make them like this at 16 inches, start with a chain of 58. For row 1, single crochet across. I like to do my single crochets for a strap in the back bump of the chain. So instead of the top of the V like you might be used to doing, tip it over and go under that bump at the back. That makes a nice edge on both sides of your strap, as you can see here. And do that all the way to the end. For row 2, chain 1 and turn, single crochet in the first 2 stitches, then chain 3, skip over 3, and single crochet all the way down to the other end, chain 1 and turn again, and then single crochet all the way back. And when you get to those 3 chains, just do 3 single crochets in those, and then 1 more in each of the last 2, and then bind off, and then you'll have your buttonhole. All right, when your straps are done, simply sew them on securely on either side at the back. Find a couple of buttons in your button jar or box, whatever you've got, and your car buddy is all done. Isn't he the cutest? There we go. All ready to go in the car. Maybe I'll save it for a Christmas gift and tuck a new book inside. I hope you've enjoyed this project and that you'll try it for yourself and make one for a special little person in your life. Let me know what you think of this project, and please consider subscribing. I love to hear from you. And in the meantime, have a super day.